can find the future inside of me. I can find my promise, deepest parts of me. I can find my promise.
Welcome to the It's All About Pink Love podcast with Dr. Renair, the Pink Love Specialist.
Deepest parts of me. Arising from the dead to find the spirit inside myself. Taking love to the deepest parts of me. There's a power, the energy in my soul that sets me free. My heart is open for the heavens which supplies my source. And it's here. I can find my promise. I can find my future so clear. I can find my promise inside of me. I can find the future to the deepest parts of me. I can find the future inside of me.
Hello, Dr. Renair here. Yes, I am the Pink Love Specialist, and I am so blessed to be with you for Chapter 2. Some people might call it Season 2, but I'm calling it Chapter 2 because sometimes I feel like it's all about pink love. It's a long book. And every time we come together for a series of conversations, we are creating a new chapter in that book. So thank you for everyone that came and listened and subscribed and shared for the first chapter. And now as we enter into the second chapter, we are preparing for the new year 2021, and I am blessed and honored to be with you during this time. Now, when we think about the conversation of it being all about pink love, I just want to take a moment and reintroduce myself to those that may be listening for the first time. Again, I am Dr. Renair. They call me the Pink Love Specialist because I'm all about helping look at what is happening in our heart space to create a new language of love in our lives. The pink is associated with the secondary color of the heart chakra, which holds the energy for which explains how we love, how we create friendships, how we show up in the world, and how we function through what may have been trauma in our life that has affected how we give love, how we receive love, and how we are love. So I'm so excited to be here. I am a relationship wellness expert. Everything from how we handle relationships with our family, with our friends, and with the loved ones, the intimate loving ones in our life. When I tell you that I've missed you, I've missed being able to talk about some of the things that have been happening in the world and around us. But every now and again, we have to take the time for our own self-care. So I always appreciate the breaks and the hiatuses that come during this time, but I'm also so glad, so happy to be back in conversation with you again. So as I started to think about what we could talk about, how we could begin this discussion, I started to think about how we usually prepare for the new year. The language of new year, new me is so real. We talk about our New Year's resolutions. We talk about all the things that we want to accomplish, all the things that we want to see happen as we move forward into this new year. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me, 2020 has been interesting. It has had some very high highs and some very low lows. When I kicked off the year, I had all these conferences and places to speak at. I was on track to take my business and my life to another level. But what happened was, of course, the pandemic. And the pandemic changed so much for so many people. And I was one of those people that it changed it for. Conferences that I was scheduled to speak with either canceled or switched virtually. Projects that I was working on, their budget changed due to having to allocate money to a different place. It was just shocking for me, and I'm sure it was shocking for people on a bigger level. So when I thought about how you could prepare for the new year, and I know a lot of people are feeling like, I don't know, because I prepared for this year, I was ready for this year, and everything that happened was completely unexpected. How can I put that kind of effort, that type of work into preparing for a whole new year when I don't even know what's going to happen? But one thing that you do know about you. You do know the things that you know about you. And so that's where we're going to begin this new chapter of It's All About Pink Love. We're going to talk about the subject of don't you already know? Aren't there things about yourself that you already know? Think about that and let us begin this conversation. So last week I was watching this movie on Netflix called Just Another Christmas. It was this comedy drama, Brazilian comedy drama at that. And it's like one of those voiceover movies where it's done in one language and they have actors that voice over and do it in English. So the original language of this movie is Portuguese, but it's voiced over by these actors. And when I tell you that this was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, it has this Groundhog Day-ish kind of plot. And if you don't know what Groundhog Day is, it was this movie years ago where someone keeps repeating the same day over and over again. However, it shows up in the plot. And we've seen it appear in other movies, but for some reason, this particular movie is hilarious in its own right. Now, someone may see it and say, that was not that great. But for me, I had these very serious moments of laughter. So not doing a commercial. I don't get paid by Netflix to say this, but if you get a moment to watch Just Another Christmas on Netflix, check it out. But I'm not here to be a spokesperson for the movie, but there was something that happened in the film that spoke to me deeply. And so I just want to share it with you a little bit. There's this one scene, and I'm not going to spoil the movie or give too much information, but there was this one scene where the mother-in-law is sitting outside and she's smoking a cigarette. And the main character comes out onto the patio and decides to take a puff of the mother-in-law's cigarette. And so he takes this puff and he starts like choking on the smoke. He's like, I don't even know why I'm smoking anyway. Now, I'm not going to give it verbatim. I'm not the scriptwriter, right? But the mother-in-law begins to share with him that her daughter had already told her that he was back smoking again. So he looks at the mother-in-law in amazement and says something like, well, she didn't mention it to me. Because he was unaware that the wife knew that he had started smoking again. So he says to his mother-in-law, well, why didn't she tell me? And the mother-in-law looks at him and says something along the lines of, don't you know what it is that you do? And he just stood there looking a little stupid. And the wife comes out and there's a whole series of events that follows out after that. But what jumped out to me, what spoke to me was that statement, don't you know what it is that you do? I think that a lot of times when we are doing things and showing up in life a certain type of way, We have this expectation that people are supposed to speak on our behalf. They're supposed to tell us the things that they recognize is going on with us. They're supposed to share with us information that they have observed. Now, not that we've asked them, not that we've engaged this conversation with them. We just assume that if they notice something new about us, if they witness something different about us, that they are supposed to tell us. Why? Because that's what we just expect people to do that are in our lives. We don't always have the courage to tell them when we are making changes. We don't always have the courage to step forward to say, well, yeah, now I'm doing this. But just because we don't say anything doesn't mean that people don't recognize. They don't recognize shifts in our behavior. They don't recognize the difference in our conversation. We just assume that they are going to tell us the things that they see that are different about us. Now, granted, I'm not going to even hold you. Like, sometimes people will tell you the stuff that they notice, and it's not always the things that we want to hear. But the reality is we know when things have changed for us. Now, I'm not saying he should have walked in the house and said, hey, I'm smoking again. But I think what he failed to realize is there are things that show up different when you are engaging in certain activity. If you are a smoker, 9 times out of 10, people will already know. Even if they don't know initially, they will begin to know whether it's because the smell is starting to get on your clothes or your hair or in your home. It could be you take certain breaks throughout the day. Or how about this? They might have seen you. Now, I remember when I used to smoke cigarettes, I would find out later, people would be like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that you smoked. You hid it so well. But then at other points, I would know that my friends would be like, we know you smoked. We're not stupid. We already knew. Because certain behavior that I showed to people led them to the conclusion that I was a smoker. So, in engaging this conversation, I wanted to unpack this conversation of what you already know about yourself. And why is it that we expect people to share with us the knowledge that they've acquired? So think about it. If you are a person that deals with depression, there's a certain type of language sometimes that starts to come out to other people. It may not be within the way that you speak. You may not be calling people and like, oh my goodness, I'm going through this, I'm going through this, I'm going through this. But you may have people in your life that start to notice that you've kind of started to close off from everyone. There's something about the way that you show up that has changed. You may not be your happy self. You may not be your open self. You may have started closing off. Or it may be the other way. You're making some positive changes in your life, and you start to look different and sound different and talk different, and people are like, oh, so you've changed some things. But understand that no one is obligated to notice the shifts that you make in your life. The most important person that is supposed to notice the shifts that you make in your life is you. Why? Because you're the person that lives out the consequences of every change and every decision it is that you make in the world. Not anyone else's responsibility to point that out for you. So you may say, Renair, I hear you, but I do rely on people to show up in my life a certain kind of way. I rely on my pit crew, and that's what I call people, your close support system. I rely on my pit crew to help me understand some things about myself. I rely on people to hold me accountable to some things, and I do think that that is important. But I'm a firm believer that like internal development, shift, change has to start and end with you, because you're the person that has to live out the consequences of whatever you decide or whatever you choose. So when we're talking about don't you already know, what are some things that you already may know about yourself? Now, granted, this year was a year like nothing that I've ever seen in my 45 years. So I'm sure you learned some new things about yourself. Some people learned that they were a lot more resourceful than they thought they were. Some people learned that they were a lot more resilient than they had ever had to be. Because this was a time when job loss was happening, things that we thought had a deeper foundation, even things about our political world, we thought we completely understood, that we were like, what? So I hear that it can be difficult sometimes to be honest with yourself in a place of uncertainty, because you don't always know what the external circumstances are going to bring. But that's an important thing to understand, that external circumstances do help us shift and develop and grow. But there are certain things that external circumstances, you have to be careful that you don't fluctuate as external circumstances come your way. There are some things that in truth become very important for you to hold on to about yourself. So like he already knew that he was a smoker. He already knew that he was back to doing some behavior, but he expected his wife to have told him what it is that she knew. So when you talk about reflecting and preparing for a new year after you're leaving a year of uncertainty, the most important place to begin is the characteristics and the things that you would like to keep, that you learned about yourself in this year, and the things that you would like to let go of. When we're talking about reflecting, or even this conversation about the new year, new me, we have learned that just because you have a list of goals in place, when your goal setting involves external circumstances, you have no real control over how it's going to play out. I mean, the truth of the matter, if you want to get deep and philosophical, we don't necessarily have control over anything. Even the things that we cannot have attachments to them, because everything in life is fleeting. So just like everything in life is fleeting and flowing to its own rhythm, so are you. But you can make changes in areas where you feel like, I learned that about myself, but I didn't like that about myself. Or I learned that about myself, but I love that about myself. So we're talking about the process of reflecting. How can we extract from what has happened the past year and take what we need to take into the new year, despite the what's coming forward with Corona, despite what may have happened with our job, what may have happened with our finances? What are some things that we can take from this time into the next coming weeks to allow you to reflect in a way that permits true change, true shift, and true growth? So the first thing is to be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. There are so many things that we can lie to ourselves about, but what does that do? Think about a lie that you've ever told. How long before that lie emerged and revealed itself? How long before you had to face the truth of what you were trying to delay? I had to say that again. How long before you had to face the truth of what you were trying to delay? So when you start talking about authentic change, authentic shift, you have to have authentic reflection. Where in this situation could I have better prepared? And again, we're not talking about circumstances that arose from a global effect. We're talking about the things that were a little bit more closer to you, that were a little bit more manageable. So that begins with being honest with yourself. The second thing you can do is look at what change would mean for you. What would it mean if in this particular area of your life you were able to let go? You were able to make some improvements, make some tweaks so that moving forward, this particular area would show up different for you. Maybe there's a book or something you're supposed to write. Maybe there was something that you wanted to do. But what are the changes that you need to put into your system in your life that will help you achieve the goals, that won't allow you to succumb to procrastination? What are some things that you can do to make things better for you? So for example, say for instance your goal was to take the time to start a blog. Now here you are, it's almost the end of the year and you didn't start a blog for whatever reason. So now you're going to sit down with your pen and your paper to say, I know the truth about myself is that I can be a procrastinator. I can show up in the world a certain type of way. I know the truth about myself is I don't have enough faith in myself to believe that I'm able to do this. I know the truth about myself is that I worry about people's opinion more than I worry about the truth of myself. Now, I will be honest with you. There were moments that doing It's All About Pink Love was hard for me. Because I honestly felt like, how do I bring forward messages of encouragement? How do I engage in a language that's about empowerment and motivation, which I've done most of my life, when we are in a time that motivation may not be what people want to hear? People have had massive change in their life. So how can I sit up on a podcast and talk about you should do this, you should do this, you should do that, in a time when people don't even know what's going to happen in the world day to day? But I had to get honest with myself and truthful with myself to say, you know what, this is part of who I am innately. This is part of who I am. Part of my purpose is to encourage and motivate people. So I had to deal with some truths about myself in order to be able to come back to this spot to bring you chapter 2. Because truthfully, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to bring It's All About Pink Love back because of my concern of how do I bring an enlightened message? How do I bring light into moments of deep, long darkness for people? And once I had that real conversation with myself, I began to say, well, what would it mean if I changed my mindset around this? What would it mean if I got real and sat down and had an honest conversation in these next 8 weeks about what is happening in my life and how the things that have been happening in my life, I could possibly help someone through the moment that they're in, even if I can only help one person somewhere out here. At least I did that. And even if that one person is helping just myself, I'm worthy and deserving of that. So that gave me the incentive, the push, the nudge to bring It's All About Pink Love back for another 8 weeks. So that's what I'm saying. You have to ask yourself, what difference would this change make in my life? What would it do? Not necessarily externally, but what will it do internally? When you stop moving in your purpose, when you stop moving in your gifts, when you stop moving in your dreams and your goals, your light goes out. You start to become internally depressed because you're not moving anywhere. You've become stagnant. So that's why it's important to decide what stays and what goes. What stays and what goes for you. Despite of how anybody else may feel about it. See, this is the most important. If you hear nothing else that I've said for the past 25 minutes, hear this. The most important thing about understanding what needs to stay and what needs to go is because you are the most important person in your life. Even if you have children, even if you have a mate, outside of your relationship with your higher power, you are the most important. Now, they may be the most outside space of importance. How you take care of your children, how you take care of your family, how you may take care of your friends, those may be important outward spaces. But when you do not take care of yourself, eventually what comes from that will affect your children, your family, your friends, the things that are most close to you. Because who you are and how you treat yourself and how you take care of yourself and how you progress yourself and how you think of yourself starts to show itself in your dynamics and relationships to other people. Now, don't ask me to say that again, because you know this is unscripted, and so that just flowed. But yes, how you show up in your space has this way of releasing this atmospheric consequence to how you treat your children, your mate, your family, your friends, and ultimately yourself. So, if I could leave you with anything else until we come together next week, as you prepare for this new year, as you go through that space of journaling out your expectations or visualizing your what you would like to see happen in the upcoming months, even if at bare minimum you just want to sit and reflect what has come and what you desire to be, it becomes most important for you to move in your truth. Ask yourself, what don't I already know? Ask yourself, what am I expecting people to point out and to show up in a way to tell me? Ask yourself, what is it that I can do to make these changes and accomplish the goals that I want to put in place for 2021? Yes, take into account what is happening around the world for the stuff that you would like to see come through, especially things that are in a tangible way. But when we're talking about the intrinsic changes that you would like to make to self, sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and if it helps to have a visual aid, put a little mirror in front of you and say, self, what is it that I am acting like I already don't know? And what is the truth that I am trying to delay? Write those things down and make those changes so that you can begin to create a different language and dialogue for yourself moving into 2021. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for this conversation. And I want to thank you again for taking making the decision, making the choice to tune in for another chapter of It's All About Pink Love. And until we meet again, remember that everything that you do shows up as you, for you, and in you. And if you can do nothing else in your time, be love. Be pink love. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining Dr. Renair today. For ways to stay connected, please visit www.pinklovewellness.com. You can also follow her on social media. She is Renair Amen everywhere.
I can find a future to a deepest part of me. I can find a future.